Hey everybody, I just want to jump on here and do a quick video because I tried to do it live and I couldn't get anybody to come in and talk with me. So I thought just let me do a video and leave you guys with some things to think about. Welcome to my video. If you like what I'm talking about, you're interested or it moves you in any kind of way, then hit the like button. You know, shoot me some stars because that keeps me going. Because those stars make me create more content. And I was explaining on that live that I try to make my videos and my lives more fun and spontaneous and, you know, hilarious and enjoyable. But there's a time comes when you have to get serious sometime. And that's what this live was about. I was going to get in a little bit serious and talk about something that I feel like is relevant and it's needed to talk about. It's something that we just need to get our heads out the sand and maybe just take a look at. And what I want to do is just examine some of this with you all, my people, my community. uh, you know, my Facebook followers, people, my YouTube followers, just people who, Instagram people, whatever wherever your platforms are, wherever you're coming from, I'm here to talk about what's really, to me, could be possibly a crisis in the black community. Maybe in the world, but I know for sure that I want to address the black community. And that crisis is, have you guys noticed, or has it seemed like it's just increasing in the amount of suicides and depression and mental health issues that are just affecting our black community, particularly our youth and sometimes our elderly? People are so depressed, and I just want to say, but get a handle on what do you guys think is going on? You know, I know, you know, I'm not, my head's not in the sand. I know we're going through the pandemic, and folks, it ain't over. The pandemic's not over. You know, they're loosened up a little bit, but it's not over. So, but the first time we've ever experienced a global pandemic, you know, a global pandemic. Just the thought of that not just over here in Atlanta or Seattle or Arizona, but it's across in all the other countries in China and Africa and where else? South America and Canada. It's just everywhere, you know, the global pandemic. And it impact all of us in one way or the other. If we didn't get COVID, if we haven't gotten it, we know someone who has. If you were lucky enough to live through it and didn't die so far, we know people who have. We've seen people who have lost loved ones, who've lost family, children, parents. It was hard, so I can understand being depressed. Depression, you know, circumstances can definitely lead to an escalation of the escalation of depression and other mental health crises. You know, the just the fact that when you were going through the COVID, the first beginning of it, we were all isolated, you know, quarantine, can't come out the house. Could you imagine? There were people who were so alone. Um, and I'm talking, you know, I live alone, so I understand that being alone. But then I'm talking about, but I have people that I can turn to and people that that, you know, were there and I know I can reach out. But I'm talking about that kind of aloneness that it was bad enough for some people who are lonely and alone. But when you're totally cut off from someone and you're in your own head, you know, and sometimes your head is a dangerous place to be by yourself. You know, your brain can tell you all kinds of crazy things and you start to feel like no one cares. And you know, the reason I'm talking about this is because it just seemed like, you know, lately a friend of mine, someone very close to her, committed suicide. um, was not a kid this time. This was a grown man, a family man. Found out some issues that had been going on, something to do with CPS and losing custody of the children, whatever it is, circumstances that push a person to the point of no return. Like, I can't do this no more. I'm done. I'm checking out. What gets a person to that point? Now, I know that mental health, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Depression is a form of mental health. And I try to do a little research. You know, there's major depressive disorder and there's clinical depression. And, you know, I'm not talking, folks, about I'm feeling a little down today. I'm kind of going through something, and for the last couple of weeks, I've been feeling just a little off, a little down, and or maybe it's lasting a little longer. And I'm going to talk to my doctor about it and see if I can get something. I'm feeling anxiety and, you know, that type of thing. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this major depressive disorder where you can't snap out of it. and people who unknowingly trying to be helpful, like, oh, girl, come on, girl, wake up, get out of it, get yourself together, come on, pull through it, you all right, do it. Those kind of words are not helpful because it's not something they can just pull out and pull through. It's a disorder. It's a medical, physical disorder and a mental disorder. So it ain't like you can say, oh yeah, you know what, I'm cool, I'm okay. You got to have support. And the reason I say that is because people do survive and come through major depressive. Sometimes it's with medication, support, therapy, friends, family, whatever it is. It's a journey that is a very hard one, but people with help. And that's another reason I want to do this, so that you can recognize it in your friends and in your family members and help them. Don't see the thing about it. I just was reading something about in the Black community. We have a tendency that anything that has to do with the mind, you keep it to yourself because they think you're crazy. It's just a label. If you say, oh, I'm feeling anxious, that's on you. See, that we're so quick to judge, and we got to come out of that. We got to stop that. Because what happens is people will shut down. They'll put a smile on their face, and they'll pretend that everything's okay because they don't want to be shamed. They don't want to be told they're weak because I can't seem to snap out of this. It has nothing to do with being strong or being weak or self-willed. None of that. It has to do with a mental disorder that is affecting them totally, physically, spiritually, and every other kind of way, mentally. So we have to be more cognizant of what's going on with our kids, what's going on with our sisters and brothers, what's going on with our friends. Joe's been really looking down a lot lately. Maybe it's time to talk to him. Get some of the brothers together and go, say, are you okay? You doing okay? What's going on with you, Joe? Or, Sue was really like she's having a hard time. She just had that baby a few months ago. Maybe she's still having postpartum depression. Who knows? Because I've heard cases where the mother just couldn't survive the postpartum depression and killed the kids. These kind of things can be addressed and not snickered at and laughed at and called weak. But let's say to those people, can I help you in any way? Really, can you want to talk? Sometimes I could just be a good listener. I can pay attention. I don't have all the words to say. I'm not a doctor by any means. I'm not a medical person. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I am a good listener. And I can be a good friend. And I can hear you. And maybe I might know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that can help you or to get you to the right direction to get the help. But what I won't do is I won't ignore you. I won't ignore you. I won't pretend that, oh, you should be all right, because I don't know. Because I would feel very amiss to find out that somebody that I could have reached out to or at least opened the door so they could reach out to me, and I missed my opportunity and that person maybe took their life or ended up in some other kind of tragic type situation. I had some statistics I had pulled up and talk about Black community, this type of crisis in the Black community. And I don't know, I want to share a couple things with you all. And it talks in here about mental health conditions occur in the Black and African Americans, people in America at about the same or less frequency than in white America. So that's something I know. And it also says that, because we misunderstand it so quickly, in the Black community. And so that kind of piqued my interest. And it says here, we know people of all ethnicities and cultures experience mental health conditions. That's common in the world. And we know that Black individuals experience mental health challenges at the same rate as other groups. However, when you consider the mental health of Black Americans, it's important that we take a look at the historical and cultural factors, some of which have led to all these disparities, significant disparities. So, for example, 25% of Black people seek mental health treatment when needed, compared to 40% of white people. So we don't go get help. The stigma, it's a stigma attached to mental health, and it's not new to the Black community. Martin Luther King Jr. reportedly had severe depression during periods of his life, and he refused psychiatric treatment. Even when he was urged to seek it by his own staff, they would tell him he need help. Unfortunately, though, that type of scenario continues to be common today, with African Americans just not seeking help because of the stigma attached. But you know, we can all work together to recognize and address this challenge. But we have to understand where it comes from and why it's so ingrained in our culture. Um, Back then, at that time, it was commonly thought that enslaved people were not sophisticated enough to develop depression. We wasn't even smart enough to get depression, or we were sophisticated enough to develop anxiety or other mental health disorders. So, from those historic misconceptions about us, from that we learned to ignore mental illness. We just learned to ignore it or call it other things like stress or I'm just tired. We don't call it mental health. But some descriptions for mental health, depression, and mental illnesses that are adopted by the black community and passed on from generation to generation, it led to us underestimating the effects and impact of mental health conditions. We just didn't we missed the boat. The train left the station. And it also has strengthened beliefs that a psychiatric disorder is a personal weakness. I talked about that a minute ago. It's not a condition. She's just a weak person. And, you know, people think that, oh, you know, she should be stronger than that. She, you know, you can handle it. You fall apart and have a nervous breakdown, you know. And I remember the word nervous breakdown used to scare me to death. What? So, you know, but it also racism and trauma toward mental health. Black Americans develop mental health conditions. They are equal to other people, but the Center for Disease Control, get this, you all, the Center for Disease Control has declared racism a serious threat to public health that has placed communities of color at greater risk for poor health outcomes. Now, I'm not surprised to hear any of that. Of course, we have poor health outcomes. But when we consider the mental health of Black Americans, we got to remember to view their experience through the historical and cultural lens, like we talked about. The Black community as a whole has shown resilience in the face of adversity for centuries. We wouldn't have never survived slavery if we didn't. So starting in the 1600s, in the U.S., Black people faced oppression in the form of enslavement of Africans and their descendants. The fact that a group of people were once considered property and not human beings, and the effect this has on people of African descent cannot be underestimated. Don't get it twisted. Throughout 1965, the U.S., they made laws that were used. Check this out. They had laws that were used to justify abuse of Black people in the years after the Civil War. Black people faced oppression in the form of sharecropping, farm labor that severely restricted economic mobility. You couldn't get out. You know, they call it sharecropping, where you never get enough money to get ahead. They faced segregation. They faced enforced and legalized separation from housing, healthcare, and all kinds of services. But racism today is often more hidden. It's a little more subtle. But it's still dangerous. Don't get wrong. It's still dangerous. It exists in the form of reduced access to housing, healthcare, and education, and increased incarceration. Where's our people going? Where's the men in jail? So I just want to say the social, the economic, and the emotional toll it continues on Black people for communities of Black people. So now, according to the American Psychological Association, racial trauma can result from direct experiences of racism as well as insidious occurrences that add up over time. That little stuff that just adds up when you, like on the job, and you keep getting these little things and they just keep putting you down, and before you know it, you just beat down. Major experiences of racism that include, you know, we know about the physical attacks and the verbal attacks, but indirect stressors, like when we see these videos of all this police brutality every day, you know, you're seeing just the Tyre Nichols just recently, you know, the Ahmaud, the one here in Atlanta, I mean, the Ferguson, the name it. Every time you look around, the police beating up some Black man. But just seeing these videos, it can result. It has an impact on you. The trauma can result from intergenerational trauma, traumatic stress that's passed on really from one generation to the other. So we all have a reaction to stress, and sometimes, you know, there's normal reactions and there's abnormal. But your response to trauma depends on you, the type of trauma, and the meaning of it, as well as the culture that you come from. So when you have experienced this is for the Black community, when you've experienced multiple traumas throughout your life, you are at a greater risk for experiencing a bigger trauma. So, and you also have more severe symptoms and they last longer. That's why you have higher rates of PTSD. We're at 8.7% compared to white people at 7.4%. We just have it longer and more. And also, talk about this, African American youth, the kids, are at a risk of developing PTSD. Nearly 65% of American youth report traumatic experiences compared to 30% of their peers from other ethnic groups. So, since treatment shortly, after an event takes place, if treatment shortly afterwards is a major factor, it's important to get treatment. So, therefore, we have lack of access to health care. It may contribute to the higher rate of trauma symptoms and more PTSD among African Americans. You know, it's a lot to think about, you all. I know that trauma can be passed down through genes. It's a thing called intergenerational transmission, and stress can cause changes to reproductive cells, and as well to the uterus where the baby develops. And so, because of this, people whose ancestors experienced trauma may be more vulnerable to mental health issues. Who are they talking about? They're talking about us. Our parents, our families, ancestors were slaves. So we might be more vulnerable to mental health conditions. And even individuals who didn't experience the trauma directly, you might have inherited trauma symptoms like anxiety and mood dysregulation. This has mental health implications for descendants of people, including Black Americans, who have experienced oppression and violence. So, I said all that to say we got a problem, folks. We got a problem in our community, in the Black community. It's a problem, and we really need to be thinking forward, thinking about how do we handle this? How do we stop that generational curse of depression and we're that slave mentality that keeps us beat down. We need to really, really look at that. And I just want to share that. And I don't want to be a gloom and doom video, but I just want you to think about it. When you see our kids, and be more in tune with the children. Ask them questions. How was your day? Because that goes along too. You kids are getting bullied. You don't know. They come home and they're in there with their earphones on, and you don't know what's going through their head or what they even listening to. And just say, what's going on with you? Take time and say, let's just have a conversation. Son, how are you? Daughter, how you doing? What's really going on? Grandma, how are you? Uncle, auntie, sister, brother, talk to each other. Let's tell each other what's really going on. Because when we do it together, we're going to have to do it together. That's the only way we're going to overcome it. We have to do it together. We have to be our own support, each other's support. We have to be our own backup plan to help each other. Each one help one. So reach your hand out, try to help somebody, put a smile on somebody's face, let somebody know that this ain't the end. It might just be the beginning of something new, something different. And people's lives are changing daily from trauma, and just so much is going on in the world today. Violence everywhere you look. You're scared to let your kids out the door. You're scared to go out the door. I'm about scared to go to the gas station. Never after dark. I wouldn't dare. But, you can't live your life in fear like that. So we have to live. We have to get out and do things. But I really just hope that this message I get across today is, please, people, pay attention to what's going on with your children, with your family members. When people seem to be down, try to help them get to the bottom of it. Sit down and talk to them. Are you okay? Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? I'm here. I'm a listening ear. You can talk to me. You get an honest-hearted, trusted friend, and you talk about what's going on. You take the power out of it when you talk about it. When you keep it all locked up in it, just rules you. It takes over. But when you talk about it to someone, you take the power out. You break it down 50% of it. It's just not that bad. So that's my message today. Just talk to each other. Tell each other the truth about what's really going on. Look at our kids and make sure your parents, you're talking to them. Don't just holler at them and all that. Talk to them. Sit down and have a one-on-one at least once a week with your child and let's see what's going on with you. Spend some quality time with your people, with your spouses, with your friends. Just spend some time. And just remember, you heard it here. Depression don't have to be a generational or a racial factor, because we as a people, we can overcome anything. I believe that in my heart. We can overcome anything. So that's all I want to say. So you know what, y'all? Holla at your girl. See ya.